Research teams all over the world have been finding more and more examples of how we have mercilessly underestimated animals for a long time. Not only apes and humans can solve problems, make individual decisions and plan long term, but also some other animal species. This turns the worldview of biology completely upside down because obviously we have overestimated ourselves as a species for a long time. Check out the experiments that show that animals are much more than pure stimulus reaction machines and how research teams want to make use of these findings, for example, in the construction of intelligent machines. Right now on Clixoom Science Fiction, subscribe to the channel to never miss a video again. 1, 2, 3. A warm welcome. The big question above all, is the behavior of an animal species the result of a biological automatism, or is actual planning, stubbornness, perhaps even the individual decision of an animal behind it? Research teams around the world are finding more and more evidence that we have greatly underestimated the intellectual achievements of other living creatures and totally overestimated ourselves. For example, a French research team was able to show recently that honeybees are not only able to compare small quantities, but that the animals even understand the concept of zero. In the experiment, the bees were rewarded with sugar solution if they selected the picture that shows the least number of elements. So, if the animals could choose between a picture with 3 or 6 elements at best, they should choose the one with the 3 elements. The research team was more than surprised when the bees chose the picture without dots, i.e. 0 elements. So it seems that bees know that 0 is also a number. Children need years to understand this because 0 is a huge neurological challenge. Adrian Dyer from the University of Melbourne, who was involved in the experiment, explains this. It is relatively easy for neurons to react to stimuli such as light or the presence of an object, but how can we, or even an insect, understand what nothing is? How can a brain represent nothing? The fact that bees, i.e. insects, also have the necessary intelligence for this is new. We have known for some time that birds and monkeys are also capable of this. This is also shown by experiments with bumblebees, which were supposed to reach a hidden flower and learn to pull by a thread. But where does this intelligent behavior come from? Does it have much less to do with higher brain functions than we had previously suspected? This is an incredibly exciting aspect for the development of artificial intelligence. Robots, for example, are supposed to find their way in extremely complex environments. Dyer explains this. Crossing a street is easy for adults. We understand when there are no cars, bicycles or trams. But what is 0? How do we represent it for so many complex object classes to make decisions in complex environments? If bees can perceive 0 with a brain of less than 1 million neurons, it suggests that there are simple, efficient ways to teach AI new tricks. Some researchers also believe in so-called intelligence without representation, a behavior that results from a direct but not purely automatic processing of information, without living beings having to understand an abstract concept. Some research teams in this context assume, for example, that spider webs are part of the cognitive system of animals, and the hungrier the animals are, the tighter the webs are. This makes the catching of prey more likely. One advocate of this theory is the Australian biologist Ken Cheng. For many behavioral researchers, one thing is certain. The way classical biology describes the world with its hierarchies is no longer valid. For according to this, the intelligence of an animal should be smaller the further it is from the human family tree. So sheep would have to be smarter than birds because these are not mammals. However, there are quite a few experiments that prove the opposite. Crow birds, for example, are not only able to recognize themselves in the mirror and use tools, they can also plan for the long term. Jonas Rose from the Ruhr-Universität Bochum, Germany adds, "Jays hide food for the future." Rose says, for example, if there are always mealworms in one cage for breakfast, peanuts in the other, and peanuts and mealworms are offered to the jays that evening before, they hide exactly the food that will not be available in this cage the next morning. In experiments, they were able to use microelectrodes in the brains of animals to show that the working memory of birds is comparable to that of monkeys. In addition, the research team is working on further studies that have a further surprising result. According to these studies, birds think in the same way as animals with a cerebral cortex, but with fewer resources. However, birds do not have this layer of the brain at all. Pigeons are also cleverer than most of us think. They can distinguish meaningful words from meaningless letter combinations, and the animals don't even have to learn these tricks. Ducklings declare the first creature they see in their duck life as their mother, no matter whether it is actually a duck mother or an object. Oxford zoologists imprinted ducklings on 2 blue balls that passed the ducks. The chicks then choose the identical shapes even if they had balls with different colors and objects with the same shape but different colors to choose from. But this makes one extremely important thing clear in this context. Martinho Truswell, one of the Oxford researchers, explains, "We wanted to show that any system that can identify any object is also capable of learning abstract categories," he says. That doesn't mean that the ducks have learned an abstract concept. All we can say is that they behave as if they had learned an abstract concept. So it also means beware of over-interpretations. In animal experience, one should not rashly read human-like intelligence into a behavior. But why do mammals have so many nerve cells when animals with fewer nerve cells can show similar intelligent behavior? The explanation: the results seem to be similar, but more neurons are needed for special performance in certain living conditions. The animal's nervous system always produces possible behaviors. With many neurons, however, it also generates a particularly large number of possible behaviors in order to find a solution by trial and error. Intelligence, therefore, is a kind of module construction kit with different mental abilities. This is also how Björn Brems from the University of Regensburg sees it. In other words, the examples just mentioned are not so fascinating because they show how intelligent birds or bees really are, but because they show how little neuronal computing power is needed to perform special mental tasks. For intelligent behavior in machines, this would mean that no large, highly developed brain is necessary for higher cognitive abilities. Intelligent behavior could even be implanted in a small robot brain. A supercomputer is therefore no longer necessary. And so neuroscientists and computer scientists come together to unite their disciplines. The company DeepMind has developed a neural network that generalizes experience. It randomly tries out actions to solve a problem. Successful actions of the software are rewarded and become better and better. One of the developers, Matthew Botvinnik, sees this meta-learning as an essential key to artificial general intelligence. We never experience the same situation twice, but we never experience a completely new situation. Every intelligent system must therefore have the ability to use the experiences of the past to transfer them to new tasks in an elegant and quick way. He sees the development of an environment in which the AI system can live, learn and train as a major goal of AI research. A research team from Germany is going the other way, from real life into a computer program based on it. Here, models were built that were based on the so-called fungal bodies of bees, where the neural networks converge. Here, it was only determined whether, and if so, to what extent two nerve cells are connected. One of the researchers, Lars Chitka, was involved. Then we tried out what happens when information is pumped through these networks, exposing them to various environmental stimuli. Two stimuli were introduced and trained at first, one positive, namely a floral scent that brings a lot of pollen, and a scent that is not really worth in the end. New but similar fragrances were then added to the developed net, and indeed, the bee brain simulation preferred a fragrance that was most similar to the rewarded fragrance and that at the same time lay as far away as possible from the punished one. Thus, the overall benefit was optimized, which the researchers also refer to as the peak shift behavior. The result of the experiment is astonishing and should be transferred to many other AI, so that they become intelligent in a way that most of us can't even imagine today. In addition, the zoologist Martino Truswell said, "We are surrounded by an incredible number of brains that are able to solve tasks that we would like machines to solve." He cites the example of the ants, and who knows, maybe autonomous cars will soon be as intelligent as ants. Check out this video to see how incredible smart octopuses are. Click here and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss another video. Stay tuned and see you soon.